What's up, everyone? This is Sean from ControlPlusSpace.com, and joining me is the one, the only Kevin Prince from Drummer101.com and 111 Studios. Say what's up, Kevin.
What's up?
All right. So you want to tell us a little bit about what your operation is all about? Want to tell us about that? What's the difference between Drummer 101 and the 111 Studios?
Absolutely. 111 Studios started back in 2008 with just one building, one unit that is a recording studio and where I taught my drum lessons out of. And a couple of years later, in 2010, we got to expand next door to make a full music school where we teach an array of instruments: guitar, vocals, piano, bass, keyboards, some wind instruments, and saxophone, flutes, all that stuff. And our main office and lobby is over there, but we still have the recording studio over here in my lesson room. And that's basically what we've been doing for the past 12 years is music lessons and recording.
Beautiful, beautiful. So where are you located if you want to have lessons from this wonderful gentleman here? Where are you located, Kevin?
Yeah, so in-person lessons, we are in Roseville, California, in the historic district. And what I usually tell people is we are right across the street from Old Town Pizza because people seem to always know where that place is. So
you could have some pizza, some lessons, and even record some wonderful music. That's
absolutely
a great location. Wonderful location. So anyhow, shall we start with the questions?
Let's do it.
All right. So here we go. First off, tell us about the name of your studio. Why did you name it that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we found the building for this place, we kind of walked through and it was just a pile of mess. There really wasn't any structure, walls built inside. And when it started to become a reality that, okay, this could be a place that I could take over and, start tenant improvements and build the studio, we were going around with names. I mean, my friends and my parents and I were kind of kicking names back and forth for a little while. And 111 is a kind of like a close number to me that has some meaning. It was my grandparents' address that also lived in Roseville, California, right up the street from the studio, in fact. And my grandfather had a small business down in Old Roseville, and this kind of place just always has, just some meaning. It hits home, and it's been kind of familiar in part of my life growing up and everything. So their address was 111 Studio, or not 111 Studios. Their address was 111. And since that number kind of stuck with me, I would wake up in the middle of the night and it'd be 111. Weird dates and times and everything would be 111. And it was a number that would kind of just show up and follow me. And I just say it's a number that kind of adopted me. So when we were going back trying to figure out names, we were like, let's do this studio, blah, blah, blah studio. And we're like, no, that's not good. And then I had looked at the clock and I was like, I got to go to rehearsal. It's 111 Studios. Is that good enough for you guys? And everybody was like, yeah, that works. So it was a no-brainer.
Sounds like it chose you.
Exactly. And a lot of people mistake it for the address. They say, okay, your address is 111. And I'm like, nope, that's at the bar up the street. But we're 127 and 129, but not the same as the name 111.
Oh, it'd be too perfect if that was the address.
It would.
So you're 127 and 129.
Correct.
All right. So if you guys are looking for this gentleman and looking for some wonderful lessons, you know where to go. So what about drummer101.com? What's up with that name? Where'd you come up with that?
So that is a separate entity, which it's my online business that I run out of my studio, 111 Studios. And I film all the lessons here in my lesson room at the studio. And I edit everything in my video studio in the back. And that's where people that can't study with me in person per se, but they want lessons from me, they can subscribe to my website and they can get lessons there.
Oh, okay. So the name Drummer 101 came from the educational side.
Yeah, it's like a college course, something, right. Yeah. Blah, 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 101. And yeah, the number 101 and 111, looking back at it now, I would definitely rebrand it different because people really get confused on the Studio 111 and Drummer 101. People call it Studio 111 or Studio 101 and Drummer 111, and they kind of get it confused. But it's, yeah, what
it
can you
goes
do?
with the territory, I suppose.
It does.
I think those are great names, and the Drummer 101 is like a great name because it's like it really fits with the college course. I think that's wonderful. So anyway,
Absolutely. And since we're in the old Roseville district, there's probably like 12 bars within like 3 blocks of us. And there is a bar 101 across the street. So to throw more confusion at things, yeah. And they came probably 5 or 6 years after Drummer 101 started. And it's a bar called Bar 101. And I still, yet to this day, have no idea why they called it that. But I'm good friends with the owners and the people that work there. And when it's not quarantine and everything's shut down, when they are open, they have good food. So I frequently get their tacos there for lunch.
they did it to mess with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Jokingly, of course. But anyhow, so you've been drumming for a really, really long time and recording for a really long time. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your musical past? Tell us about your early years. What got you into this stuff?
Yeah. So when I was a young kid, I would go help my dad get the Christmas decorations down from the attic, and he had this vintage, like 1960s, made in Japan domestic drum set that was blue satin flame. And I was like, Dad, why isn't this set up in my room? Like, we gotta set this thing up and play it. And I guess a while back he had lent it to one of his friends, and when he got it back, there was no hardware, there was no cymbals, it was just the shell. So it was just kick, snare, rack toms, and floor tom, and there was no pedals, no cymbals or anything like that. So we set it up and I just kind of banged on it and made noise. And we collectively would go to like secondhand music stores and buy, used gear to kind of, I guess, Frankenstein this drum set together with hardware and cymbals. And I was the worst drummer that walked the planet for several years. My dad he would never discourage me, but he would say like, yeah, you're sounding good, Kev.
Oh,
And he would never show that, but there was no hope for me, and I'll be the first to admit it. But I'm going to say that I'm living proof that you can, if you want something bad enough and you want to develop a skill, you can. You just have to put the man hours into it, and don't let anybody tell you can't do it. Because I've had people say, my music teacher in 6th grade, when I took band in 6th grade, I played snare drum for about 45 minutes, and then I quit. He's like, Prince in the back, snare drum, you should play basketball. Like, I just was not, and I could be exaggerating on that, but I was terrible. I had no clue what I was doing. And I just sat there and kind of locked myself in the room. My dad played drums a little bit, but he wasn't a drum teacher. So there was a very short fuse and some frustration that once I didn't get anything, he would just, okay, like, you're on your own. And he would take off into the other room. And, I mean, like I said, he was never discouraging, but he kept me going. He says, you know what, you're at a point now where you're doing good. We should get you into some lessons. And I mean, I had the ultimate supportive parents that allowed the drums to be set up in the house, which is amazing. And I got a little bit of lessons and got better. And let's see, I started playing when I was 10. I'm 35 now. So quite a bit of time. There's some years behind that. And I've gone from not knowing which end of the sticks to hold to, playing concerts with 5,000 people and hearing songs on the radio and sitting in a movie theater and watching a movie with your song being played in it and everything. And it's really cool stuff. But I think as a musician or anybody that's trying to hone their craft, you can never, what is like, I've made it? There is no, I've made it. For some people, that could be, I played a bar in front of 35 people, and that was my bucket list thing that I wanted to do, and that's as far as I'm going to take it, and I'm happy if it never goes from there. And some people are winning Grammys and, living in big houses, and it's still not enough for them for their, what they've done with their music career. So I think for everybody, it's different. Like when people come to me and they're like, man, you've had a song on MTV, like you must be rich. What are your royalties from that? And I'm like, my royalties is big fat nothing, because you get in the wrong mix of people. You don't get, you gotta watch the stuff that you sign and what you get into.
Yeah, the music industry is pretty predatory, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And I know a lot now. Yeah, in me being 35 now and a business owner, I approach things way different than when I was like 23, and just starstruck to be playing with these bands that I listen to and playing co-headlining or opening up for bands that, I've looked up to for so long. And I mean, you kind of just got to get over it, and it's all business, but you got to have fun.
So you've been playing for 25 years.
About, yeah.
Wow. So you know what you're doing, obviously. And would you say lessons helped?
Yeah, absolutely. Lessons definitely helped. And I mean, fortunately, went into lessons one day, and my teacher, I was probably 14 or 15 at the time. And my teacher said, "Hey, I've got good news and bad news. Bad news is I'm going to be leaving. I'm not going to be your teacher anymore. I'm moving. And so but you're going to have a new teacher. And it's somebody that at the time they had a band that was pretty popular in the area, and they've had some pretty big recognition. And the drummer quit to pursue teaching, and he was younger, but now he's one of the world's leading educators in drums online. And to watch him grow from that is huge. Just to say, I still connect with him every once in a while and see his progress. It's very inspiring.
Do you want to say who it is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's Mike Johnston. Mike's lesson.
I think you mentioned him before. Tell us more. Tell us more about him. I'm sorry. Your teacher.
Yeah, so he was in a band called Simon Says, and they were a popular band in Sacramento, and then they got bigger. They did some, tours around the world, and had their 15 minutes of fame and did their thing. And he ultimately quit to pursue teaching drums. And I mean, the stars aligned. I got to study with him, and that was a game changer for me. I probably know for a fact I wouldn't be where I am now doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for him, because he switched the paths for me and made me kind of realize, he opened my eyes to what you could do with not only drumming, but with teaching.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, you would say teachers matter then, right?
Absolutely.
I would agree with that. My life has been, a lot of my decisions have been shaped by teachers, right?
Yeah.
They have such a huge role in your life. I mean, whether it's from lessons or from school, I mean, it's amazing.
Absolutely. And it's, I think being a teacher, one thing that I've learned is, from my experience, is when I got done with lessons with my teacher and I would go home, I think it was in one ear, out the other ear. But even, 10, 15 years later, it comes back and it starts to click. There's things that stick that, this hasn't been taught to me in 5 or 6 years, but I remember him saying that, and it comes back and you kind of relearn those lessons in time. It's something that might not stick initially, but as time goes by, it happens to make a second pass and come around, and it's like, okay, well, now I fully understand this. And being a teacher, you can't get frustrated with your students. You can't be short-fused or short-tempered and get frustrated with them, because just know if it doesn't stick today, it's going to come back to them. You just have to make sure you're doing your job as a teacher and explaining it in multiple different ways to where they have somewhat of an idea and get it before they walk out that door.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So from experience that patience matters.
Absolutely.
That's great. So
and I tell all my students that this is the most frustrating instrument in the world. And at 25, 26 years later, I still get just as frustrated as I was on day one on new things I'm working on. But you can't let that you can't let that overpower you, and you can't let it defeat you. You have to go back and say, okay, well, have I grown since day one in the past 25, 26 years? Yeah. Heck yeah, I have. And you don't see those daily improvements, but over a month, year, 10 years, you start seeing big improvements. And that, that's what starts to add up. If you're not where you want to be, it doesn't mean you're not going to be there tomorrow.
So you say keep at it then.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, great answers, really great answers. So what led you to being a teacher? Like what made you do that, from being like a dude with songs on, like a song on MTV and all that good stuff and playing in front of 5,000 people, to being a teacher? What made that happen?
Yeah. Well, so I started teaching because after shows, people would come up to me and say, "Hey, we really liked watching you. What was that you did up there? Can you maybe give me a few pointers?" And I got together with a couple of people and started, taking what I've learned in lessons and of course, over the past, 20 years, developing a different teaching style and evolving that teaching style. But back then it was doing my best at interpreting what I was doing and what they wanted to do and how to get them to to reach their goals, to what they want to do. And so I had 2 drum kits in my bedroom at my parents' house. I'm just out of high school at that point before I moved out, and I'd have people come over to my house and I would start teaching there. I had an opportunity to teach at a music store locally, and I did that for a few years. And before I moved and opened my spot, but along with that, I actually full circle came back around and I taught at my old teacher's drum school for a handful of years also. And that was another thing that was, full circle. It came back around and I got to revisit those things, those lessons, just by kind of immersing myself into that culture, into the drum culture. If you want to be a basketball player and you want to be, the next Michael Jordan, don't go hang out with the water polo team. Go find out where the basketball players are. Hang out with them. So that's what I did. I was like, where are all the drummers at? And I found the drummers, and you make friends with them. You hang out with them, and you just immerse yourself in that world of whatever it is you're trying to do.
Okay. So you'd say your fans really got you started because they came up to you after the show. And,
yeah.
And that inspired you to really find other drummers to get you really involved in the space, correct?
Absolutely. And being in a band, I was in a not so great experience with one where it turned something that I woke up and first thing I thought of was like, I can't wait for the show tonight. Or is it Friday yet? Is it Saturday yet? When are we going to get up and play? And real eager to play, to almost a depressed state of I have to go to band practice because you don't like the people you're in a band with.
Wow, that sounds like a terrible experience, but I bet a lot of people watching could relate. Because these things happen.
They do. And you can't let somebody else's opinion, somebody else's words, you can't let it beat you. You have to, if there's something that if there's a requirement you're not meeting, you have to figure out, okay, what are my weaknesses? How am I going to get better? And yes, there are ways that you can deal with, on the opposite end. You translate your issues with a band member, but, it just was delivered very poorly, and it didn't make it a comfortable setting. Right. But I mean, you go to find out, no names mentioned, but you go to find out that who ends up being the successful person in life. And I've met people that are wonderful, wonderful people, and they're not the best at what they do, but they're making a living doing it because their personality is so great. Not to say they're not talented. They are. They might not be the Buddy Rich at drums, the greatest drummer that ever was, but they're good and they have great attitudes. And that's what overpowers everything, is having a great attitude. Where I've met people and have worked with people that are incredible musicians, but they have a terrible attitude. You don't ever want to associate with them. You can't stand being in the same room with them. And that just cripples them. That's a self-destructive mode.
I think that applies to pretty much everything. And I think you've already summarized that, like, attitude is almost everything in the real world, right?
Absolutely.
Nobody wants to work with a jerk. And we've all worked with great musicians, but they're just jerks. Like, nobody likes that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you don't want to be the person that, has done a little bit and you could have done great things, or just a little bit of things that in your head was a great thing. And you could have, a very high opinion of yourself when people are grateful to work with you, and it's not reciprocal. You don't reciprocate that appreciation for working with them. And that comes off very strong. And people can read that very, very quickly.
I think you're 100% right. So appreciation's a big thing for you. And you've always been a
Absolutely.
great guy, Kevin. Honestly, over the years
thanks,
I've known
man.
you. So you always had a positive attitude, and that's why I've always thought, I better every time we don't talk for a few years, I always think, who was cool, who was always cool? Kevin. So I always come back to hitting you up because we get busy, the feeling, and I'm like,
absolutely.
Kevin was always super down for everything. So why am I not talking to him right now?
Hey man, it's all good. You've been on a pretty cool path yourself. I mean,
Thank you, thank you.
doing what you've done with music in your school and in your
Thank
career and
you.
everything. I mean, man, it's wonderful. And you're doing great things. And I know you're out there in the world doing positive stuff. So I don't take it as an insult if we don't, I don't take it personally if we lose contact for a while. I know you're always there, brother.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I feel the same for you. And then that's why I hit you up. I'm like, dang, Kevin's alive. What's so?
I'm still alive.
I'm happy for that. So let's move on with the questions. What led you to becoming a producer slash engineer? Tell us about that. What happened there?
Yeah. All right. Well, I was always fascinated when our bands would go in and record in the studio with the whole experience and the whole just evolution of a song from you having an idea to putting it out on, a recording. And it started with just me, a couple microphones in my bedroom and setting up mics and, okay, well, I've got 2 microphone inputs, what can you do with drums here? And then that grew to getting a larger interface. Now I got 8 inputs and started just recording kind of my own bands I was in.
Uh-huh.
And then it kind of grew to recording other bands, and you just practice it. It's a skill you got to practice, just like any instrument or sport you play. You can get better at it. You can develop an ear for it. As long as you're not deaf, you can develop an ear and know how to edit drums to make a bad drummer sound good and in time, and how to make a singer sound in time and in tune. You can do all that stuff. You just got to practice it and know what you're doing. And the years go by. You look at your mixes and you're like, my mixes are way better now than they were, 3 or 4 years ago or 10 years ago.
You know what it sounds like to me? The same story with you, perseverance and attitude, right?
Absolutely. Oh, there's been so many times I've wanted to quit playing drums, quit recording. And one thing that I have to say is huge, because I get asked this all the time, is what keeps you going? How can you do something for so long and not burn out? And it's like, no, I burn out. I totally burn out. Everybody burns out. But what you have to do, if you burn out, then you're one of 2 things. You haven't learned anything new. You're not challenging yourself, and it becomes real mundane. So learn something new on your instrument. Learn a new drum fill. Learn a new groove, something that pushes you, that when you get to your practice space and behind your drum set, you're excited to work on it. And the second thing is, if you don't like the space you're in, change it. I've done a handful of remodels over the past 10, 12 years in this place. And recently, this is our largest remodel here, but I spend so much of my time here, and I wasn't saying I was uncomfortable in my space, but I wanted to create a better working environment and a workspace for me. So, I mean, that's what I did over the course of this year so far.
I was going to ask you about your renovations later on in the interview question, but since you mentioned it, would you like to, let me see what the question is. You just renovated your studio. What did you do there, and what improvements have you made? Do you want to show us anything?
Absolutely. I'll give you a tour. So
beautiful.
Take this guy out. And you know what? I'm going to flip. What did I do here? Let me flip the camera around real quick. Okay. So here's like the front door. This is our parking lot. Here's wonderful Roseville.
Oh, yeah. I remember that place.
Yeah. And then, so in here, here's our control room.
I remember that couch.
Yep. Couch is still there.
Oh, that's where the magic happens.
Yep. Hey, what's up, guys? And we got some, one of my students just walked in.
Hi.
It's almost lesson time. So we'll go in here to the live room. Yeah. Just in here. Yeah. So into the live room / lesson room. Got my drum kit right here. Back into the control room where we just were. And then the student's kit over here.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's the renovations. Those are the renovations, huh?
Well, yeah. So we did this back wall here used to be just a plain wall that was dark gray with a couple of acoustic baffles that were like triangular, and they stuck out. And same thing with the wall over here behind the student's kit. I got rid of those. We built out these frames in my garage, And then I put the LED lights behind this one. My father-in-law was in town and he helped me with the DIY reclaimed wall look, that just the white drums with that wood just kind of pops. So
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
yeah.
I like that. I like that. So it sounds like you have to get going here pretty soon, huh?
Yeah, so I got a lesson. I lost track of time. It's actually about lesson time for me. But what we can do is we can definitely jump into a part 2. We can continue it up if you would like.
I would like that. I would actually really enjoy. I actually enjoy talking to you, Kevin. Believe it or not.
You too,
But,
man. Yeah, I believe it. I've enjoyed talking to you too, man. It's been a while.
Thank you. It really has been. Before we go, do you want to tell people how they could connect to you, connect with you, like your social media, your website, how they could get lessons from you, or even record with you, or the such? Please tell them.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the recording studio, 111 Studios, 111musicstudio.com. It's in Old Roseville. Just make sure you go to the one with the old Roseville address, and you can see on our teachers page. Just find me. You can shoot us a direct email through that site or my lesson site, drummer101.com, which is strictly all online drum lessons. You can email me privately at kevin@drummer101.com. Drummer101.com, I believe, is my Instagram name. You can either search Kevin Prince or drummer101.com. And then Facebook, just Kevin Prince. I'm one of probably 500,000 Kevin Princes out there. And I'm not the soccer player, though. So there is a famous Kevin Prince soccer player, and I'm not him.
There's a famous drummer and soccer player, Kevin Prince. What?
Yep.
Well, anyhow, I guess that's all the time we have for this session. We'll probably be doing it again. So hopefully everyone who found this insightful, hopefully people enjoyed this, because I certainly did. How about you, Kevin?
I had a blast, man.
All right, so I'm going to say goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much. And Kevin, please say your goodbyes.
We'll see you guys later. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. All right, I'll see everybody later.